Today I'm going to show you the steps involved in creating your book page wreath. The first step is to create your wreath base or form. As you can see, I just used an old piece of cardboard box that I traced around a plate to get my shape, and then I used a smaller plate to trace around to get that center part of my wreath. Do not throw away the center section of your wreath. You can use that to create a mini version of this same book page wreath. I also need to use old recycled book pages. In this case, this book was removed from circulation several years ago, and so I was able to remove the pages from the book. You'll notice that my edges are not clean. That is not really an important step. So don't feel as though you have to remove that rough edge, because that won't be seen when you create your cones to create your wreath. The other items that you will need, if you don't have a glue gun, no worries. It is not required. Also, if you do not have a stapler, do not worry. You can actually create this entire wreath using tape. So I will show you both ways. And that way, when you go to make your own wreath, you can use whatever you have on hand. So the first step is to create your cones that will make up the wreath, okay? So what I'm going to do is it's easiest for me to start from the bottom right-hand corner, but you will actually, as you create these cones, come up with your own system, and that's perfectly fine. There are no right or wrong ways to do this. So I'll just show you what works best for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the bottom right-hand corner of my book page. And I'm going to take that bottom right-hand corner and I'm going to turn it in on itself. So you can see I have the makings of a cone, okay? So I'm going to tuck that corner in and I'm just going to start to roll. And you want to roll towards the top right corner of your book page. And what results is the cone that you will use to add around your wreath. Now, you can roll this cone as loose or as tightly as you would like. This is a little tight, so I'm going to just undo it a little bit, and you can see I have a nice cone that I can attach to my wreath base. But before you do that, you need to secure that corner. So this is where you can use a glue gun. I like to use a stapler. I feel like that's a very fast way to create that cone. Or if you don't have either of those items, you can simply use a piece of tape. And I'm just going to tape that little corner down there, and there's my cone. Okay. Nothing has to be too strongly secured because this is a somewhat delicate wreath. So don't feel like you have to put tons and tons of tape onto your cones. So you're going to create a whole bunch of cones, and how many you need is determined by the size of your base. So obviously for this size, I'm going to need probably 30 to 40 cones. But for something like this, I would only need maybe 15 to 20. And then it's also going to depend on the size of your page. So in this case, I'm creating a pretty standard book page size. If your pages are a little larger, obviously you will need less cones to fill your base form. Once I have my cones created, this is when I start to add them to my base. So you're going to start with what would be the back or the bottom of your wreath. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this cone to my wreath base. And this is where I prefer to use a glue gun. However, once again, you can take tape and just tape it right across, and that will work just as well. So in this case, because I have my glue gun, I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the back of my cone, and then I'm simply going to attach it to my base. Just like that. Okay, so that's how I start. I take my next book page, I create my cone. Again, I start at the bottom corner and I kind of manipulate it to get whatever size I feel is appropriate. I'll show you how to staple with this one. I'm going to take my stapler, get this rolled a little bit better here. There we go. And I'm just going to staple my edge there, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach it to my wreath. So once again, I'll take my glue gun, put a little bit of glue, and I'm going to make sure that there's no space between my cones. So as I'm creating this, I want to fill in and cover up my wreath form, okay? So once you do that the whole way around, the next step is to add your next layer. So once again, I'm going to create my cone. And I will tell you that when you first start making your cones, it takes a little bit of a trick to get it, but I guarantee you will get it as you continue to make them. So as I'm making my wreath, let's pretend that I have my outer layer complete. I'm now going to come back in and I'm going to make my center layer. And in this case, my center layer, I'm going to overlap the point of my cone, and I'm going to actually wrap it around to the back like this, so that I won't see that rough edge of my wreath. And again, I'm just going to take a little bit of glue, and I'm going to put my wreath cone right here, okay? And don't worry if initially it kind of sticks out, because as you are building this, you're going to be adding a third layer, and that will push that down. But if that bothers you, if you don't like the fact that it's sticking out, because you can see that it's pulling away from my cone, you can simply add a little dot of glue in there, and then that will secure that for you, okay? I find it really helpful to flatten out my cone a little bit right up against my wreath form, because I know I'm going to be adding a third layer of cones. So it's actually a 3-layer wreath that I'm making, okay? I can also go ahead and start to secure the back flap. So again, just putting some glue on the back, and I can glue that down, okay? And then that will cover the back, okay? So we just continued the same process by creating the cones and then adding them to my wreath form and then gluing down in the back. So the last layer, or third layer, and again, you might have another layer, you might have a 4th layer depending on the size of wreath that you're making, but I think 3 will be sufficient for this one. As I'm making my cones, and I start to wrap them around, you'll notice that I am just allowing more of my cone to wrap around the center section, and that's what will create that layered effect for my wreath, okay? And then once you're finished, all of your tails will end up covering the rough edge of your wreath. The final step, once my wreath is complete, is to simply turn it over and take a paper clip. Undo the paper clip, and you can create a hanger for your wreath. So I can just take some glue here and put it over the top, and then that will hold my hanger in place. This will not be a heavy wreath, so don't feel like you have to find something real sturdy to hang your wreath. Obviously I'm using a paper clip here, which makes